This is the RTE from Dublin. We are interrupting our scheduled programming for the following news alert.
My name is Deirdre-siobhan Dillon, and I ran as an independent in the 2024 local elections in Offaly, Ireland. We are told by the media for the last number of weeks about the impending fuel crisis and soon coming even worse crisis. But am I the only one who notices that the same said Irish politicians went off on holidays for 2 weeks, which proves at least two things. That number one, they are not concerned about getting re-elected, and number two, they are pre-scripted by their handlers, and so they can go on holidays and the agenda continues. On the first point about the seeming politicians and their not being concerned about being re-elected, there is an alarming reason for this. I covered in my somewhat censored previous video of the 19th of March 2026 that investigates systemic vote rigging by the European Commission and their pan-European proxy in Ireland, Naman. The public have been kept in the dark about this by the media, the so-called alternative media, and all of the so-called elected politicians and all government bodies who claim to protect the public from unlawful activity. For example, the Attorney General, the Chief State Solicitor's Office, the DPP, the Electoral Commission, etc., and all of the aforementioned who have an incestuous, mutual, selfish self-interest at the expense of the public who they feed off. Over the last week or so, there has been a lot of postings by those who claim to be representing hauliers, transport businesses, even farmers, using the name Affordable Ireland campaign. Curiously, there is no clear names of any individuals involved, but claim to have set up a committee and have sent off a letter to politicians that the public have not seen a copy of yet. This current group of agitators who are trying to stir up protests that would be detrimental to the poor working class in Ireland through shutting down the transport and the commerce that the general public depend upon. And keep in mind that this will not have the slightest impact on the vote-rigged politicians who never have to be concerned about public opinion. And if it came to it, where they were in the slightest danger, they have at their disposal the unlawfully armed Garda Síochána gang, who have well proved their ability to undermine the fundamental rights of the Irish people under their false pretences, and would certainly have no compunction of any harm they would do to Irish people to defend a vote-rig criminal politician. The rigged election fake Taoiseach Prime Minister Micheál Martin admitted at the start of the fake crisis that Ireland got oil from the North Sea and Norway, and not the Gulf, and there was no real shortage of supply, but not overlooking the fact that Ireland is extremely rich in natural resources, including oil and gas, to name but a few. While I do not want to bore you about what fake Irish politicians are babbling on about, there is serious implications through serious crime that is very likely to affect you, your family, your grandchildren, your finances, your basic freedoms, and very likely to lead to civil unrest in the future. On this first point, Micheál Martin's new media regulator was brought in not only to censor Irish people, but apparently everybody else in the world too. This due to the social media companies being based out of Dublin, with the censorship world superpower organisation named Naman, which was set up in March 2023, but was preceded by the foundational EU Digital Services Act 2022, the previous year, and that being without consultation and without consent during the COVIDian terror years. We verified this latter fact of the convenient lack of consultation with the public and lack of consent with all the MEPs by email and registered post. Seemingly concerned American politicians through the House of the Judiciary Committee published an extensive report in February on how the European Commission, through the Digital Services Act and its proxy Naman, were directing big tech social media to censor public opinion across the Western world and interfere in elections and promote the European Commission's preferred candidates. In their document titled Foreign Censorship Threat Part 2. on page 114, quote, most major technology platforms have their European headquarters in Dublin, making the outcome of Irish elections particularly important to the European Commission's tech agenda. For the same reason, Ireland's media regulator, the Commission na Man, is one of the most powerful in the world. Due to the discoveries by the investigators for the Judiciary House Committee, it points to the elections in Ireland and other European countries have been rigged at least since 2024. As a consequence, Irish people do not have any lawfully elected representatives and only individuals selected by the European Commission, pretending to represent the Irish people. Other things to keep in mind from the above is sadly that we have discovered through making direct contact through phone and registered letters with the Committee on the Judiciary, also to the US Ambassador in Dublin, Edward Walsh, that the US interest in this was not based purely on the interests of Americans or Europeans' freedom of expression and right to have fair and lawful elections. But their interests appears to be based on a selfish and jealous interest in being the only ones to control the aforementioned freedom of expression through the US-owned social media platforms. The Americans, knowing about the European Commission rigging elections, still welcomed same-said politicians for a free holiday at the expense of the Irish people to fake celebrate St. Patrick's Day in America. Also, you may or may not be shocked to know that the unlawfully set up censorship superpower Commission na Man, who is involved in European-wide vote rigging, is completely funded by the Irish people and without consent, to the figure likely in the many billions but not fully disclosed amount, with the European Commission being very generous to itself at the Irish taxpayers' expense, but also makes the Irish people unlawfully liable should anyone in Europe or America want to sue for damages for infringement of their own constitutional rights. The European Commission have decided that the Irish people will carry the can for their crimes. This unlawful interference in social media and elections will explain the massive widening disparity between the Irish public and the perceived political representatives, who increasingly accuse the Irish people, for example, of being racist, while politicians overrun the country with their foreign guests, injected en masse without consent, also brought in to unlawfully vote for the criminal politicians, to the point of civil unrest, and the point being that politicians no longer need to be elected by the Irish public and depend only on being selected by the European Commission. This is an increasingly dangerous situation where the apparatus of the state is increasingly weaponised against the native populations across Europe to continue the wicked agenda. From an FOI we submitted, we discovered that the Irish taxpayer has paid over €1.3 billion for countrywide IT infrastructure, which would be stolen from the Irish people to the sole benefit of the EU Commission, the politicians they select, and big tech. Essentially also theft by stealth to surveil through digital ID to control and oppress the Irish people, a digital prison they even had you pay for yourself. You are paying for your own imprisonment. There is a wider solution for the public to benefit from, to protect from private corporations undermining the rights of the public, which I will be revealing in a major video in the near future. In my next video, I will follow and expand on from this the dire implications of the public being misled further and on other related subjects in the national interest. Thank you for your interest in this matter, which affects all of us who love our freedoms and our nations, hence all of the time and research put in by myself and others concerned. Please follow me on other platforms listed in the description to better offset the unlawful censorship until we fairly resolve the matter.